All right, so you wanted to know about Admiral McRaven's Make Your Bed. It's packed with insights from his 36 years as a Navy SEAL, but, well, you're busy, so we're doing this deep dive into the 10 key lessons. They're perfect for conquering your day or even changing the world. You ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, so McRaven lays these lessons out in his book. Each one is a chapter. We're talking about making your bed, finding your crew, facing your fears, things like that. And he throws in some pretty fascinating stories and training scenarios. Since you've already navigated this book, where should we start?
Let's jump right into chapter 1. Start your day with a task completed. McRaven kicks things off with the seemingly mundane act of making your bed.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first read this, I thought, seriously, making the bed.
Mhm.
But McRaven argues that it's about way more than just a tidy room.
Exactly. He's talking about the psychology of starting your day with a win, no matter how small. It's about setting the tone for discipline and achievement. He even describes noticing that Saddam Hussein, while in captivity, didn't make his bed, contrasting that with the orderliness of American troops.
That's a pretty powerful image. It actually reminds me of something called the Zeigarnik effect. It's a psychological principle that says unfinished tasks tend to stick in our minds more than completed ones. So by making your bed, you're not just creating a sense of order in your room, you're also clearing your mental space for the day ahead.
That's a great connection. It's like checking off that first to-do list item before you even officially start your day. And that sense of accomplishment, no matter how small, can create a ripple effect of motivation.
Absolutely. And it ties into another psychological concept called the progress principle, which suggests that making progress towards meaningful goals is a key driver of happiness and well-being. So even making your bed can be a small step towards a more fulfilling day.
It's incredible how McRaven takes something so simple and extracts such profound insights. He's really setting the stage for how seemingly insignificant actions can have a big impact.
Right. And that brings us to chapter 2, You Can't Go It Alone. Now, this one might seem obvious, especially coming from a Navy SEAL. But McRaven's take on teamwork goes beyond just having people to help you out.
He really emphasizes the interdependence and vulnerability that true teamwork requires. He uses the example of the 10-foot rubber raft they had to carry everywhere during SEAL training. It was heavy, awkward, and impossible to maneuver alone.
It's like the ultimate metaphor for teamwork. You literally can't get anywhere without everyone pulling their weight.
Exactly. And he even shares a very personal story about a near-fatal parachute accident that left him with a shattered pelvis and needing months of rehabilitation. He's very candid about feeling vulnerable and needing help to recover, both physically and emotionally.
It's powerful to hear that kind of vulnerability from someone like him, someone who's known for his toughness and resilience. It reinforces the idea that even the strongest individuals need support and connection to thrive.
Absolutely. He talks about how his wife was instrumental in his recovery, constantly encouraging him and helping him through the difficult moments. It highlights the idea that your crew isn't just about accomplishing tasks. It's about having people you can lean on, people who will be there for you through thick and thin.
It's about that deep trust and reliance on each other, knowing that you're not in it alone. And it makes me think about those high-performing sports teams or even successful businesses. They don't win because of one superstar. They win because everyone plays their part and supports each other. It's the collective effort that makes the difference.
Well said. And, this idea of interdependence is crucial. For building resilience, too, having that strong support network can be a buffer against stress and setbacks.
Right. Having a crew can make all the difference, whether you're facing a physical challenge like McRaven's accident, a professional setback, or even just the everyday stresses of life.
Okay, ready for chapter 3. This one is called Only the Size of Your Heart Matters. Here, McRaven challenges the idea that physical size or outward appearances define strength.
This is where I start to see the deeper message emerging. The idea that SEAL training isn't just about physical toughness, it's about developing mental and emotional strength as well.
Exactly. He shares a story about a small but incredibly determined seaman recruit who everyone doubted could make through training. But this recruit, despite his size, had an unwavering determination that pushed him to succeed.
It's the classic underdog story. We all love to root for the person who defies expectations and proves that inner strength can overcome any obstacle.
Absolutely. It's about grit, perseverance, and that refusal to give up, even when the odds are stacked against you. And then, to further illustrate this point, McRaven shares a personal anecdote about misjudging Tom Norris, a Medal of Honor recipient, because of his unassuming appearance.
Wait, he misjudged a Medal of Honor recipient? Someone who had demonstrated incredible bravery and selflessness?
He did. He admits that he initially underestimated Norris, because of his physical stature, but then he learned about Norris's incredible actions in Vietnam, rescuing downed pilots, and risking his own life to save others. It's a reminder that true courage and strength often come in unexpected packages.
It's a powerful reminder not to judge a book by its cover, right? There's so much we can miss if we only focus on outward appearances. McRaven's encouraging us to look deeper, to recognize the potential that lies within each person, regardless of their size or stature.
It's about recognizing the heart, the character, the inner drive that truly defines a person. And it's a reminder that we all have the capacity for greatness within us, even if it's not immediately apparent.
All right, now for Chapter 4, Life's Not Fair, Drive On. This one hits a little closer to home, wouldn't you say?
It does. This chapter is all about resilience, about developing that mental toughness to deal with the inevitable setbacks and challenges that life throws our way. And McRaven introduces us to a concept from SEAL training called sugar cookies.
And we've all heard about those dreaded sugar cookies, but can you explain exactly what they are and why they're so significant?
It's basically a random act of hardship, often seemingly arbitrary. It's meant to teach SEALs to deal with the inherent unfairness of life. So you might be doing everything right, following all the rules, and then boom, sugar cookie.
It's like life, isn't it? Sometimes things just happen, and it's not about whether you deserve it or not. It's about how you respond.
That's the key, and McRaven goes on to illustrate this with the story of Mookie Martin, a SEAL who became paralyzed after a cycling accident. It's a heartbreaking story, but Mookie embodies the chapter's message.
Tell us more about Mookie and how he dealt with such a devastating setback.
Despite his paralysis, Mookie refused to let this define him. He went on to become an accomplished painter, a father, and even founded a triathlon. He embodies the idea of driving on, refusing to be defeated by circumstance.
This really resonates with me, and I'm sure with our listeners as well. We've all had those sugar cookie moments where life throws us a curveball. The question is, how do we respond? Do we crumble under the weight of it, or do we find a way to keep moving forward?
That's the essence of resilience, right? It's not about avoiding hardship or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about acknowledging it, processing it, and then finding a way to adapt and keep going.
I think that's a powerful takeaway for all of us. It's a reminder that we have more control over our reactions to challenges than we might think. We can choose to dwell in the unfairness of it all, or we can choose to focus on what we can control and find a way to move forward.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that resilience is a skill that can be developed, just like physical strength. Mental toughness takes practice and intention.
All right, on to Chapter 5, which feels like a natural continuation of this idea. Failure can make you stronger. This chapter really challenges our conventional thinking about failure, doesn't it?
It does. McRaven argues that failure, while often painful and discouraging, can be an incredibly valuable teacher if we approach it with the right mindset.
I think a lot of people try to avoid failure at all costs. We see it as a sign of weakness or incompetence, but McRaven seems to embrace it as a necessary part of growth.
He does. He introduces us to a concept from SEAL training called the circus, which was essentially extra training for those who failed to meet standards.
So it's like the consequence for not performing at your best. Not exactly a fun experience, I imagine.
It wasn't. He describes it as grueling and exhausting, both physically and mentally, but he also explains how he and his swim buddy, Mark Thomas, went from lagging behind to exceeding expectations because of the circus.
So the punishment actually helped them. How is that possible?
They used the extra training, the added pressure, as motivation to push themselves harder. It forced them to confront their weaknesses and find ways to improve.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in this case, it's what pushes you to your limits makes you better.
Exactly. And McRaven even admits to being relieved of command early in his career, which is a pretty significant setback for someone in the military.
That's a pretty big failure to publicly acknowledge. How did he frame that experience?
He doesn't shy away from it. He talks about how he used that failure as fuel to excel in his next assignments, eventually earning higher command positions. It's a testament to his ability to learn from his mistakes and come back stronger.
The circus is such a great metaphor, isn't it? We all have our own circuses in life, those moments where we fall short, where we experience setbacks or failures. But McRaven's message is clear. Don't let those experiences defeat you. Embrace the challenge, learn from it, and use it as an opportunity to grow. What an important lesson. What's next on our SEAL training syllabus?
Well, this next chapter might make you a little uncomfortable.
Oh, good. I love a little discomfort. Lay it on me. What's Chapter 6 all about?
Chapter 6 is titled, You Must Dare Greatly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
This chapter is all about stepping outside of your comfort zone, taking calculated risks, and embracing the possibility of failure.
I feel like this connects back to what we were just talking about with failure. It's like McRaven is saying, don't be afraid to fail because that's where the real growth happens.
He's definitely advocating for a mindset that embraces challenges as opportunities for learning and development.
So how does this dare greatly philosophy play out in McRaven's world? Give me a concrete example.
He talks about his initial fear of the slide for life obstacle during SEAL training. It was this tall rope you had to slide down head first.
Right, I remember the story from the book. He talks about how it was faster to go head first, but also much riskier.
Exactly. And initially, he chose the safer, slower method because he was afraid of getting hurt.
Which is completely understandable. I mean, who wants to slide down a rope head first?
But then he realized that by clinging to the safe option, he was actually limiting his potential. He was holding himself back from achieving his best.
So it was a classic risk-reward scenario. He had to weigh the potential for failure against the potential for greater success.
Precisely. And he decided that the reward of breaking the record, of pushing himself beyond his limits, was worth the risk.
I love that he uses his own experiences to illustrate these points. It makes it so much more relatable and human.
It does, and it highlights that even someone like Admiral McRaven, a Navy SEAL, experiences fear and doubt. He's not superhuman. He's just someone who's learned to manage those feelings and make calculated decisions.
So it's not about being fearless. It's about acting despite fear.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that fear is a natural human emotion, but it shouldn't control your decisions or prevent you from pursuing your goal.
I think that's a really empowering message. We all have fears, but it's what we do with those fears that matters.
And there's a lot of research that supports this idea. Studies have shown that people who take calculated risks tend to be more successful, both personally and professionally.
It makes sense. When you step outside of your comfort zone, you're exposing yourself to new experiences and challenges, which can lead to growth and innovation.
Right, and McRaven doesn't just stop at the individual level. He also talks about how this dare greatly philosophy applies to leadership and decision-making on a larger scale.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more about that. How does he connect risk-taking to leadership?
He argues that great leaders are willing to make tough decisions, even when those decisions are unpopular or risky.
I imagine that takes a lot of courage, especially when there's a lot at stake.
It does, and he illustrates this with a gripping story about a daylight hostage rescue mission in Iraq. The mission involved landing 3 Black Hawk helicopters inside a tiny, walled compound, a very dangerous maneuver.
Wow, I can just picture the scene. That must have been incredibly risky.
It was. There were so many things that could have gone wrong. Enemy fire, mechanical failures, the helicopters colliding with each other or the compound walls.
And yet they decided to go ahead with it. Why?
Because it was the best chance of rescuing the hostages. They assessed the situation, weighed the risks, and decided that the potential reward outweighed the potential danger.
So McRaven's not advocating for reckless behavior. It's about calculated risk-taking, right? Making informed decisions based on a careful analysis of the situation.
Exactly. It's about understanding that there's always going to be some level of risk involved in any decision. But you can minimize that risk by gathering as much information as possible and considering all the potential outcomes.
It's like that saying, fortune favors the bold, but with a caveat. The bold must also be informed and strategic.
And I think that's an important distinction. It's not just about being daring, it's about being smart about it.
So how does this dare greatly philosophy apply to our everyday lives? We're not all Navy SEALs planning hostage rescue missions.
Well, think about the last time you hesitated to do something because you were afraid of failing or looking foolish.
Ooh, okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. We all have those moments.
Maybe it was applying for a new job, starting a new hobby, or even just speaking up in a meeting.
It could be anything, really. Anything that pushes us outside of our comfort zone.
Exactly. And McRaven's message is, don't let fear hold you back. Take that leap. Even if it's scary, you might be surprised at what you can achieve.
It's like that other saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
And, even if you do fail, it's not the end of the world. In fact, it could be a valuable learning experience. You can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try again, but with more knowledge and experience under your belt.
It's like we were talking about earlier with the circus. Failure can be a stepping stone to success.
Absolutely. And I think this idea of embracing risk and failure is particularly relevant in today's world, where things are changing so rapidly.
Right. We need to be adaptable, resilient, and willing to experiment if we want to thrive in this kind of environment.
Exactly. We can't just cling to the old ways of doing things. We need to be willing to push ourselves, to try new things, and to learn from our mistakes.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. Ready for the next lesson.
Let's dive into Chapter 7, Stand Up to the Bullies.
Now, this is a topic that I think resonates with everyone on some level. We've all encountered bullies in one form or another, whether it's in school, the workplace, or even in our personal relationships.
He starts the chapter by describing a night swim in shark-infested waters.
Of course he does. The man loves his water metaphors, but what do sharks have to do with bullies?
It's about facing your fears head-on. Imagine being in the dark ocean, knowing that there are sharks lurking beneath you. It's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
But McRaven says that he and his fellow trainees had to push through that fear. They had a mission to accomplish, and they couldn't let their fear paralyze them.
There's that idea of controlling your emotions, of not letting fear dictate your actions.
Exactly. And then he draws a fascinating contrast between that experience and Saddam Hussein's behavior while in captivity.
Oh, right. We talked about Hussein's unmade bed earlier. What does he do this time?
Even while imprisoned, Hussein was still trying to intimidate people, assert his power, and maintain a sense of control.
Wow, even in that situation, he was still acting like a bully.
He was, and McRaven describes how he and his team used specific tactics to chip away at Hussein's power, to deny him the fear and control he craved.
So it's not just about physically confronting the bully, it's about understanding their tactics and finding ways to neutralize their power.
Right. It's about recognizing that bullies thrive on fear and inaction. When you stand up to them, you're taking away their power.
This raises an important question for all of us. Who are the sharks in our own lives? And what would it take to face them head on?
It's a question worth pondering. It might be a difficult boss, a manipulative friend, or even that voice of self-doubt in your own head.
Right, the sharks can take many forms, but McRaven's message is clear. Don't let them control you. Find the courage to stand your ground.
And it's important to remember that standing up to bullies doesn't always mean engaging in direct confrontation. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries, seeking support from others, or simply refusing to play their game.
I love that. It's about finding the strategy that works best for you, for the specific situation.
Exactly. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away from a toxic situation.
Okay, that's a powerful message. Ready to move on to the next lesson?
Chapter 8 is titled Rise to the Occasion.
I feel like this is a theme that runs throughout all of McRaven's lessons. It's about developing that mental toughness, that resilience that allows you to perform at your best, even when things are tough.
You're absolutely right. This chapter is all about finding that inner strength to overcome challenges and achieve your goals.
Okay, I'm ready to hear more. What specific story or example does McRaven use to illustrate this point?
He talks about a particularly challenging training exercise, a night dive under a target ship.
I can only imagine how intense that must have been. Dark, cold water, limited visibility. It sounds like a recipe for fear and panic.
It was. He describes feeling completely disoriented, struggling to navigate in the darkness, and feeling the immense pressure to perform well.
So how did he handle it? What was his mindset going into such a daunting ask?
He actually quotes himself from that night saying, "Tonight, you will have to be your very best."
That's a powerful statement. It's like he was giving himself a pep talk, reminding himself of the importance of rising to the occasion.
Exactly. And it speaks to the idea that we all have the capacity to dig deep and find that extra bit of strength and focus when we need it most.
It's like tapping into a reserve of resilience that we didn't even know we had.
And, it's interesting how he contrasts this intense, high-pressure experience with something completely different, ramp ceremonies.
Ramp ceremonies. Refresh my memory. What are those exactly?
They're the ceremonies held to honor fallen soldiers, as their remains are loaded onto planes to be sent home.
Oh, wow. That's a somber topic. I can't imagine how emotionally charged those ceremonies must be.
They are incredibly moving and powerful. And McRaven focuses on the incredible dignity and respect shown during these ceremonies, even in the face of such profound loss. There's a sense of composure, of honoring the sacrifice of those who have given their lives.
It's like a different kind of strength, a different way of rising to the occasion. It's about finding grace and resilience in the midst of grief and sorrow.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and I think it highlights that rising to the occasion can take many forms. Sometimes it's about pushing your physical and mental limits in a high-stakes situation, and other times it's about finding the strength to endure profound emotional pain and loss with dignity and composure.
It's about recognizing that life is full of challenges, big and small, and finding ways to navigate them with courage and resilience.
And I think it's also about finding meaning and purpose in those challenges, even the ones that seem insurmountable.
Okay, I'm ready for the next lesson. What's next on McRaven's list of life lessons?
Chapter 9 is titled, Give People Hope.
Ah, hope. That feels like a particularly important quality, wouldn't you say? Especially in the context of what we were just talking about, facing loss and adversity.
I completely agree. Hope is essential for navigating difficult times. And as always, McRaven uses a powerful anecdote from his SEAL training to illustrate this point.
I'm all ears. What kind of hope did he find during SEAL training?
He describes the grueling mudflats exercise. During Hell Week, one of the most physically and mentally demanding parts of SEAL training.
We've heard about those mudflats. They sound absolutely miserable.
They were. He talks about the freezing cold, the exhaustion, the constant pressure to perform, and the overwhelming temptation to just give up.
So in that moment of despair, surrounded by mud and misery, where did he find hope?
He describes how, in the midst of all that suffering, one of the trainees started singing.
Singing, seriously, in the middle of Hell Week.
Serious? And it wasn't a beautiful melody or anything. It was just a raspy, tired voice struggling to belt out a tune.
But it had an impact, didn't it? It offered a glimmer of hope in the darkness.
It did. Soon other trainees joined in, and the singing spread throughout the group. And this simple act, this shared moment of music, transformed the mood of the entire class.
It's amazing how something as simple as a song can have such a profound effect on our emotional state.
It really is. It's a reminder that hope can come from unexpected places, even in the midst of the most challenging circumstances.
And it also speaks to the power of human connection, of finding strength and support in each other, even when things are tough.
Absolutely. That shared experience of singing in the mud, of finding a moment of lightness in the darkness, created a bond between those trainees, a sense of camaraderie that helped them push through the challenge.
And then McRaven contrasts this experience with another powerful story, meeting with grieving families at Dover Air Force Base after a devastating helicopter crash.
That's right, he describes feeling inadequate in that situation, struggling to find the right words to comfort those who had lost loved ones.
I can only imagine how difficult that must have been, to face that level of grief and sorrow.
It was, but he observed how General John Kelly, who had himself lost a son in combat, interacted with the families. Kelly had a unique ability to connect with them, to offer solace and understanding.
There's something incredibly powerful about shared experience, isn't there? It creates a bond that words alone can't always express.
Absolutely. And McRaven connects these two experiences, the singing in the mud and the grieving families at Dover, to highlight the different forms that hope can take.
Sometimes hope is a spark of joy in the midst of suffering. Sometimes it's a shared understanding of loss and grief. Sometimes it's a quiet moment of connection with another human being.
Beautifully said. And I think it's important to remember that hope is not just something that happens to us. It's something we can choose to cultivate, both within ourselves and in our interactions with others.
What a powerful thought. So what's McRaven's final lesson, the culminating message of his book?
Chapter 10, Never Ever Quit.
I love it. It's simple, but it's powerful. It's about perseverance, resilience, that unwavering determination to keep going, even when things get tough.
Exactly. And McRaven doesn't just talk about this in abstract terms. He describes a physical manifestation of this idea at SEAL training, the quitting bell.
A quitting bell. Tell me more about that.
It was a literal bell that trainees could ring at any time. If they wanted to quit, ring the bell and you were done. No more grueling workouts, no more freezing swims, no more pressure, you could just walk away.
I can imagine that bell held a powerful allure, especially during those incredibly challenging moments.
Absolutely. But McRaven emphasizes how resisting that temptation, even in the face of incredible hardship, is a crucial life lesson.
It's about recognizing that those feelings of wanting to quit are temporary, that there's something on the other side of that struggle, something worth fighting for.
That's exactly it. And to illustrate this point, he shares the story of Ranger Adam Bates, who we discussed earlier, the young soldier who lost both legs to a landmine in Afghanistan.
Oh, I remember Bates vividly. He was the one who, despite his injuries, still signed, "I will be okay."
That's right. And McRaven uses Bates as the embodiment of this never quit mentality. Despite his devastating injuries, Bates never gave up. He persevered through grueling rehabilitation, learned to walk on prosthetic limbs, and even returned to active duty.
It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of choosing hope over despair, even in the darkest of times.
It's a truly inspiring story, and McRaven uses Bates's experience to remind us that we all have that capacity for resilience within us. We all have our own quitting bells that we're tempted to ring at times.
It might be a challenging project at work, a difficult relationship, or even a personal struggle that we're facing.
But McRaven's message is clear. Don't give in to that temptation. Keep fighting, keep pushing, keep believing in yourself. You might be surprised at what you can overcome.
So powerful. It's about digging deep, finding that inner strength, and refusing to let setbacks define you.
And it's about remembering that you're not alone in this. We all face challenges, we all have moments of doubt, but we can draw inspiration from those who have overcome incredible odds, like Ranger Bates.
Well said. So we've explored all 10 of McRaven's lessons, from making your bed to never giving up. It's been an incredible journey through the mind of a Navy SEAL, uncovering these universal truths about resilience, courage, and the power of the human spirit. What are your final thoughts? What resonates with you the most from McRaven's book?
For me, it's the reminder that even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect. It's about showing up every day and making the effort, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. It's about finding your crew and supporting each other through thick and thin. And it's about never, ever ringing that bell.
It's about finding your inner SEAL, that grit and determination that resides within each of us. And for you, listener, we hope this deep dive into Admiral McRaven's Make Your Bed has inspired you to find your own small acts of courage and resilience. What will you start with today? What bell will you refuse to ring? Until next time, keep diving deep, and remember, even the smallest actions can change the world. 221.